Criticism continued to trail President Major General Muhammadu Buhari's extension of the tenure of Muhammadu Adamu as Inspector General of Police by 3 months. With us is a human rights activist and a police reform advocate, Mr. Okechukwu Nwanguma, the Executive Director of the Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center. It's a pleasure having you on Sahara TV, sir.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here once again.
The President, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, retired earlier, extended the tenure of the Muhammadu Adamu as the Inspector General of Police by 3 months. What's your take on this, sir?
Well, this development came to me as well as to many other observers with, well, I wouldn't say shock. I wouldn't say, disappointment, but with shock, because everybody knew that the term of the IGP was going to terminate by February 1, and there were calls on the Police Council, which is the body constitutionally mandated to handle the process of selection of a new IGP when there is vacancy. But the president did not activate this meeting. The Police Council did not meet. Unfortunately, the president didn't seem to be interested in hidden, public opinion, which is to say that the constitution, the constitution is clear on the, the public service rule is very clear on the tenure of public officers. The Police Act, which the president signed into law in September last year, is also clear on the tenure of the IGP. The IGP is given a tenure of 4 years, single term of 4 years. And once that is done, there's no law that grants the president the power to extend the tenure of the IGP. So it's shocking that the president could once again take this illegal step that contravenes both the Constitution and the Police Act, which he recently signed into law. It's an illegality, and I do not think that it's late for him to reverse himself.
Mr. Dingyadi, that's the Minister for Police Affairs, while briefing journalists at the State House, said the extension was necessary to give room for the proper selection of a successor. In his statement, he said that Mr. President has decided that the present IGP, Muhammadu Adam, will continue to serve as the IGP for the next 3 months to allow for a robust and efficient process of appointing a new IG. What's your reaction to this?
Well, this robust process could have commenced earlier. It wasn't as if that the IGP's retirement came suddenly. So why do they have to wait until the term expires and then they continue to retain somebody who is no longer a police officer? The Police Act says that, the Police Act says that once, stipulates the duration of service, whether in terms of years of age, years of service, which is 35 years, or age, which is 60 years, whichever one comes first. And we knew that by February 1, this man was going to retire. So why do you have to wait for it to happen before you now commence a so-called robust process? It simply shows how laid back, how, unserious minded this government is. You remember that when he was elected in 2015, it took him 6 months to constitute his cabinet. When he was re-elected in 2019, the same thing happened. 3 months. He claimed he was taking time to ensure that he appoints the right people. At the end of the day, he selected more than 50% of the same characters that dominated his cabinet, who were incompetent. So this whole thing is about scheming for other things. And I'm ashamed of the governors of the 36 states at the FCT who are members of the Police Council, If the president did not want to convene the police council, the governors have a role in the police council to insist that the council meets and that to ensure that they play a role in that process. We cannot continue to leave the process of appointment of that GP for the president alone. It's not a sole prerogative of the president. So all this whole talk about taking time is balderdash, you know. And at the worst, the best they could have done under the circumstance was to allow, was to direct the retired IGP to hand over the most senior officer, who is the DIG, operations, rather than extend. The president has no powers to extend the tenure of an IGP or to retain a retired police officer as an IGP. It's an illegality.
It has become the habit of this president to extend the tenure of just heads of military and paramilitary organizations, but we've had several instances. Doesn't this show a lack of diligence on the part of the president, that when a senior police officer in the rank of the IG is about to retire, he should have done his homework by preparing another person that should take over, perhaps even getting someone to act in the interim instead of elongating Adam's tenure?
You see, the truth is that if you follow the track record of President Buhari, you know that he appears like a man who was not prepared for leadership. He's not prepared for leadership. He unnecessarily delays things and does things just the way he likes. He has no regard for the law. He has no regard for due process. He has no regard even for public opinion. Even when people scream and say, this is what the law says, he simply goes on to do whatever he likes. The term of the federal road, what was it called now? What is the other parameter? Civil defense. Civil defense.
Exactly.
The civil defense. The Director General, his term expired, he extended it. That of the Nigerian prisons. And there's no law and why do you have to keep doing this? You know, because I think it's all about political considerations, scheming to, handpick somebody rather than follow. Because there's a line of succession in the police, for example. It's not difficult to know who next fits the bill. The law is very clear about the procedure. So the thing is that the man does things arbitrarily. Arbitrariness is the definition of the character of this government, and it's not good for our democracy.
Some Nigerians have said that, have reasoned that this act of sovereign vandalism or the laws governing the police, Nigerian police, is entirely down to nepotistic reasons. What's your observation to this fact, sir?
It's difficult to debate that argument because the president himself is known to be nepotistic in his pattern of appointments and everything he does. Look at even the police trust fund. There is what is called federal character. The federal character, requires that people in public office must run the affairs of the country in a way to reflect the federal character of the country, ensure that every part is accommodated. But in appointments, you see President Buhari appointing people from the north all the time. The police trust fund was set up, and both the chairman and the secretary are all from the north. This is not about the north, but it's about the way the peace president is doing things so brazenly without any qualms of conscience. And for me, I think that the man is a drawback, is a setback to our democracy.
Earlier in the week, sometimes a couple of days back, you had insisted that the president should follow provisions of the Police Act he signed in September 20 in order to de-escalate tensions occasioned by the pressures mounted by lobbyists in order to ensure his peak is the best in the circumstances of replacement. Well, why do you have to put this up? And you actually challenge the president that if he fails to follow the act, you will go to court to challenge the actions of the president? Are we seeing more challenges coming at this point in time?
Yeah, if you listen to commentaries by well-meaning Nigerians, and this is not about APC, PDP, but if you listen to commentaries by well-meaning, including constitutional lawyers and those who are familiar with policing and human rights issues, everybody, we seem to be, united in condemning what has happened. And what has happened is a clear subversion of the Constitution. And when that happens, the logical thing to do, if the president does not want to heed, good counsel, is to go to court and challenge it. I'm happy to note that a lawyer in Abuja has already gone to court, and we're going to work together to ensure that this brigandage is challenged in court, and we need to have the court make a pronouncement on this act of illegality by the president. We cannot allow him to derail a democracy that we all fought and sacrificed to bring about.
The members of the National Assembly has actually been silent as far as this matters are concerned. What moves should be made now by this arm of government now to hold the president accountable, especially for violating the constitutional provisions, and to prevail on him to do the needful?
Well, I remember that when there was this public outcry over the president's refusal to remove the service chiefs after their tenures expired. I know that on 2 occasions, the National Assembly passed resolutions asking the president to remove them and replace them with, new people that will be able to deal with, to fight insurgency. But of course, the president ignored them. And unfortunately, the National Assembly didn't seem to have the lever to go beyond that. And I'm sure you also are aware that the same president has nominated the retired service chiefs as
ambassadors, non-career ambassadors.
Non-career ambassadors. This man can never cease to shock Nigerians. What I would expect is that the National Assembly would, because by the time he submits their names to the National Assembly, I will expect the National Assembly to decline, confirmation of the names of these people who ought to be facing, trial for their involvement in human rights atrocities in the Northeast. I think this is an attempt to shield them from justice, but it cannot work. So the point I'm making is that the National Assembly, if it really truly exists, should take the president up on these serial acts of unconstitutional, actions, including the subversion of the Constitution with regards to the appointment of the extension of the tenure of the IGP and nomination of people who failed as service chiefs and ought to be facing trial. They should decline the confirmation of their nomination as ambassador.
Finally, what effect will this act of willful and transparent unlawfulness and discrimination will have on the officers and men and women under the police command?
You see, if you gauge the thinking, within the Nigerian police, you know that a lot of officers were happy and were looking forward to the exit of this IGP. This will definitely affect their morale, and of course, his retention will also slow down movement of people, because there are people who ought to be promoted as he exists, but now that they have retained him, it will keep people on standstill. So it will have a ripple effect in terms of morale and the movement of people in terms of promotion within the Nigerian police. But more importantly, it's going to also send the wrong signal, because the president ought to lead by example. When other people in government see that the president does not respect the law, does not follow the law, does not respect the Constitution, they will see no reason to also do things in a lawful manner. So the president is has always been showing a bad example. And like I always say, if there is no other way to push this man out of power, The only thing we have to do is to remain patient until his tenure expires and this cup will pass over us.
Human rights activist and police reform advocate Okechukwu Nwanguma, thank you so much for your insightful analysis.